Hello again and welcome to Backyard Farmer. I'm Kim Todd. I hope you enjoyed your 4th of July holiday and still have all your fingers and are ready to get back to good gardening. We'll be answering your gardening questions for the next hour, so you can dial 402-472-1212 if you live in Lincoln. Our toll-free number is 1-800-676-5446. Email address is byf@unl.edu. If you really prefer to send us a question and a picture for a future show, send it to that email address. Remember, you can always follow Backyard Farmer during the week. Social media includes Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and Pinterest. So let's start with samples. That's a very sad bean.
It's in nothing comparison to what you show later on, with all the flower arrangements. But this is just green beans, and I just want to show you some differences how to diagnose the kinds of insect that causes it, right? So the new one into our territory and expanding is Japanese beetle. Mm-hmm. So look at it. All the leaves there look kind of lacy like that. You think of them as being a little bit younger, and then they expand, and so it looks worse too. But the way they eat is like cha-cha-cha-cha-cha-cha-cha-cha-cha. They're just eating right there on the spot, and so they're not going to move around. They're just going to eat right there and rest, all right? So the next one we have is bean leaf beetle. Okay, bean leaf beetle is different. It's a pest that has 2 generations in the summer in Nebraska. But the holes are, let me hold it up against my blue shirt or whatever. The holes are kind of at random and large, round, the edges are cut out. So, they're just kind of finicky eaters. Eat here, eat there, and then move on someplace else, all right? So that's how you tell the damage there. Now this one here, all this flecking, I think a lot of us would think spider mites, right? Mm-hmm. And it all depends on the size of the flecking. So in this case, this is garden flea hopper. And it tends to like it a little bit shady, and they have piercing, sucking mouth parts, and there can be lots of them, so they'll create all these silvery looking flecks on the beans. And so you can usually find them on the underside or the top side. And so anyway, the next one that I don't have would be 2-spotted spider mites. And so instead of flecking, you have fine little stipples, and you'll have some yellowing and bronzing. And of course, if you turn it over on 2-spotted spider mites, you'd have little green mites there and some webbing underneath. So, one thing that you all need to have is some kind of a magnifier to take out there when you're scouting your garden or the landscape. They're pretty cheap, even have like a little illuminator too, LED illuminator, and that really helps in diagnosis. So I'm serious about that, right?
Good idea.
Yeah. Especially for all of us with old eyes.
That's right.
All right, Dennis, batty.
Right, because it's July. And what do we say? If you have bats in your belfry or in your attic or behind your shutters or someplace, let them fly till July. It's July, so it's time to put those one-way doors on. If you have just one little hole, you can get the one-way doors online, put these where they're coming out, they come out, you patch it up, they can't chew their way back in. If you have a slit in your house and bats are coming in and out of the attic, all you have to do is hang some netting with some lead weights about a foot below the crack, and for about 2 weeks, let them come out. They'll come out, fly. They won't be able to figure out how to get back in. They won't be able to get underneath it. And then you can plug up the hole and not worry about them being stuck up there. Because the young now can fly, and they'll be going out almost every night. How long should you use these devices before plugging the hole up? About 2 weeks to best.
Wow.
So now's the time to do it.
Pretty simple.
Right.
All right, thank you, Dennis. All right, Kyle, a beet.
A beet, yes, some baby beet leaves actually. And here we have Cercospora leaf spot on these baby beets. And if you look at them, we just have these kind of white lesions. The lesions have a white center, but kind of a red margin. And you may think it's just part of one of the extra red things that beets do, but no, that's actually pretty indicative of Cercospora in general, as you can often get kind of this red margin. As far as control for it, sanitation, as with most things, will be your best friend for it. For this, if you are seeing Cercospora on any of your spinach or Swiss chard, instead of doing instead of just cutting for regrowth, instead just do a once over cut. Try to get rid of all of those leaves. Then just let it rejuvenate from scratch, and hopefully those leaf spots won't be near as severe on that next round. If you do want some sort of chemical control, copper sulfates work fairly well as some of our strobilurin and fungicides.
So the real question is, can you eat those beet leaves?
I would, yeah.
Okay, perfect. All right, thanks, Kyle. Sarah, you have true beauty.
Yeah, we had a homeowner bring a sample of this in. Here, let me hold it up this way today, and I thought this would be a great sample to bring on the show tonight. This is bottle brush buckeye, and it's a tall shrub that's blooming obviously right now with these beautiful white flower spikes, you know, which give the plant its common name of bottle brush. So unpruned, this will get to be about 12 to 18 to about 8 to 12 feet tall, so it's going to be large. And it is a suckering or thicket-forming shrub. So it's not going to stay, you know, right where you plant it. It's going to want to sucker up from the base. And so in width, a planting like this will probably be about maybe 15 to 18 feet wide. So plan on it being wider than it is tall. It has this pretty palmate leaf. So you can see here, we've got 5 leaflets that are joined together to form one leaf. And a very pretty shrub. But it is going to need some size. So if you're looking for something for a screen or something a little bit unusual for your yard that will give you some summer blooms, bottle brush buckeye.
Thanks, Sarah. And that actually is beautiful as sort of understory under pines.
Yes.
Because it likes a little bit of that shade. All right, nice job, all. And you get the first set of pictures.
Okay.
Jim, yours are sort of bang, bang. Let's answer what this is.
Let's try to do it.
The first one here is, can you identify this insect? She found it on her common milkweed.
Okay, so Alanthus webworm or tree of heaven webworm feeds on those that plant, of course, but you'll see them on goldenrod feeding on other flowers as adults.
Okay, so it's just kind of there for
just there.
kicks
They're
and giggles.
beautiful. I mean, look how beautiful they are.
All right, and then the second one is also found on milkweed.
Okay, red milkweed beetle, and as a larva, it infests the basal stems of those erect wild forms of milkweed. But you know, they go along with the milkweed. They're always there. They've got a great association with each other.
All right, so good guy, bad guy, or sort of a guy?
Yeah, neutral. You know, just colorful for sure.
All right, thanks, Jim.
Okay.
Okay, so Dennis, you guys had a debate on whether you get this or Jim gets this, but it's your turn.
Okay, so I'll do it.
This is a viewer who said she found this snail. She wants to know what it is and whether it is good with garlic and butter.
I can tell you it's a snail. It's probably not one that's used in the food industry. It's a very small one. And it's a common land snail. However, we have a snake, our DeKay's brown snake, that has a real small head and sucks them down without any extra flavoring.
So do they damage plants?
They can, but mainly they're detritus feeders.
Yeah.
They might go after something like hostas, you know, really low to the ground, and they have a raspy mouth part. So they're just like snails. So if snails can damage it, I mean snails.
Slugs and snails.
Slugs.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, all right, thanks. Okay, Kyle, we had a little debate about this one too. Interesting, this is Bellevue, and this particular viewer said he's seeing all these spots on the leaves of the bur oaks along the boulevard in the neighborhood, whether it's a young tree or a great big old 50-year-old tree. A little follow-up conversation both from you and me is he didn't see any webbing, he didn't see any insects, he didn't see any, there hasn't been hail.
Yeah, and the other thing that was interesting is he has said that we're seeing these spots pretty uniform in the trees as well. Whereas a lot of diseases, we would expect them to show up kind of in one patch or in smaller areas. And so if this was just a smaller area that we were seeing, I would maybe guess that was oak leaf blister, something like that, maybe the early stages of it. But as we're looking a little bit more closely at that picture, we don't see any sort of lesions on the underside of the leaves, which kind of makes us think maybe it's insects. Which, Jim, any thoughts?
Now that I've seen that, it's so scattered at uniform, which amazes me. But if the top layer is unaffected and the lower part is damaged by some kind of chewing insect. That would be like scarlet oak sawfly. But I'm used to seeing larger patches, in fact, whole entire leaves that are completely skeletonized with that little filmy layer, of course, the upper epidermis on it. So I'm scratching my head on that one too a little bit.
All right, well, I guess we'll just keep scratching. And if you, if possible, we'd love to look at a sample. Please send it into the diagnostic clinic and we'll see what we can figure out for you.
All right, thanks, Kyle. All right, Sarah, you have an ABC 1, 2, 3. What are these vines and how do I get rid of them?
Okay, let's go.
So the first one and the second one, this viewer sent this picture, and I think the second picture is kind of the same vine a little bit later in life.
Okay. So this is honeyvine milkweed. It's a true member of the milkweed family, and this is perennial. So you can prevent the seeds from germinating, but if you don't kill the root system of the existing plant, then it will come back from year to year. So triclopyr would be a great one, but you can't spray it on, can't spray it up in a shrub or up in a tree. You have to pull it down and spray it on the ground with triclopyr, which is a broadleaf herbicide, and that would be a good one to go after it in the fall, because fall is always the best time to kill perennial weeds.
All right, and then I think you have 2 more vines.
Okay.
This one, we had 3 or 4 people asking about this one.
Okay, this one's Virginia creeper. So group clusters or leaflets of 5. That's Virginia creeper. Sometimes grown as an ornamental, but it can escape and become kind of a weedy vine too. This one looks like a wild grape. And there are actually many species of wild grapes, but I'm pretty sure that's what that is. So both of these, Virginia creeper and wild grape, are woody perennial vines. So you could go after them again. Triclopyr would be a good one to spray them with. If they do have some pretty substantial stems and trunks, what I would suggest is cutting the vine down and then doing a stump treatment of the base with a concentrated Roundup to kill the root system.
All right, thanks. And for some reason, Virginia creeper this year has just gone bonkers. All right. Well, about this time of year, you might be noticing some patches of your turf that's a little off color. Seems like it's growing like gangbusters. You could have yellow nut sedge, and that is not a whole lot of fun to get rid of. Here's Matt Soshik and UNL PhD student Luci Liu to tell you how to keep this weed from taking over.
This time of year we have some troublesome weeds in the lawn, and one of them that really sticks out is yellow nut sedge. One of my favorites because it seems to be more and more popular. In the last 5 to 10 years we've been seeing more and more every year. And some people attribute that to as we're getting wetter springs, wetter years, and yellow nut sedge thrives in that condition. So one way to tell that you have this problem in your lawn is to basically notice the yellow leaves popping through above the turf canopy, and that's one telltale sign that it's probably yellow nut sedge. One other way to look at it is, you have these leaves popping up, and if you actually get down close and look at one of them, you can see that they're in groups of 3s. They have shiny characteristics on top. If you actually cut them, you can tell that they have a triangular shape, and that is the telltale sign that it's yellow nut sedge. It's not typical to control this with any of your normal herbicides. So you want to make sure that you're identifying it, making sure it's the correct one. And what you can do then is basically treat this weed when you see it. And typically that happens in early June, maybe in the end of May. And that's when you want to control it, because later in the year, this time of year especially, it's going to start sending out these rhizomes, and we're going to get tubers or nutlets forming. And once that happens, we're not going to be able to control those tubers or nutlets, and we're going to have to plan on controlling them next year. So it's a multi-year process, especially if you have a thick stand of nut sedge and it keeps growing year after year. It's probably going to take 2 to 3 years to actually get those nutlets under control. But treating early, and sometimes it takes a sequential application to actually control them completely. So what we can do is go in with some products that work well on nut sedge. Halosulfuron, sulfentrazone, those 2 products are the most common. Solero is a new one, which is iodosulfuron, and that one also works well in controlling nut sedge. But it probably takes at least 2 applications to get good control the first year around. So here at our research center we have beautiful nut sedge crop, And what we're going to look at is some of the different competitions between turf and some of the thinned areas. And that makes a huge difference in when you're trying to control sedge, is having a healthy lawn.
We conduct this research to understand how does yellow nutsedge invade your home lawn. So in each of the 3x3 plot, we had one single yellow nutsedge tuber planted May last year. And this is what happened after one growing season. When the tuber was planting in the bare soil, they pretty much take over the entire plot within one growing season, versus when they were planted at the center of a healthy Kentucky bluegrass turf, you can see that their invasiveness have been greatly reduced. So the take-home message of this study is that maintaining a healthy turf is the key to reduce the invasiveness of yellow nutsedge.
So if you do find this in your lawn, you want to make sure that you treat it very early, because if you wait too long, the tubers are going to be formed already, and you're not going to get very good control for the next season. So if you find this in your lawn, you can look for those characteristics of the yellow leaves or the triangular leaf shape, and also if it's growing really tall, you're going to end up with these yellow flowers on top.
That's great advice for really just about any weed problem you have. Keep that healthy stand of turf. You won't have most of those problems. And thanks to both Matt and Lucci for giving us that pretty cool segment. All right, so we have bang, bang, bang
a few more
again.
images, huh?
Yeah, and this is what are these insects? The first one is a green one. And I believe this one is from Kearney.
Okay. Dogbane leaf beetle feeds on dogbane. There's a blue form that's western that feeds on milkweed.
All right, and not a bad guy.
The eyed elater or eyed
Yeah.
click beetle. Is that supposed to look like a snake's head, do you think?
No.
No?
It looks like two eyes, but it looks more binocular vision. So.
It's to surprise any form of predator, like it's larger than it is or something that's like a snake anyway.
And that one actually was Washington County. Is that a little bit east for this guy, or do you see it?
No, I think they're pretty common. And so, yeah, the larvae are like wireworms. They feed in rotted wood.
Okay, and then our third one, I think, is also an interesting, there's a quarter there, so you can see how big that guy is.
So that's a ground beetle, caterpillar hunter, and it crawls up into trees and everything and seizes caterpillars and dispatches them very quickly. So, and it's very colorful, so that's a good guy, especially like back east with gypsy moth.
Yeah?
So it's a predator of gypsy moth.
All right, perfect. Thank you very much. Okay, this is a really interesting question. This is swamp white oaks in Kearney, and we've had a lot of back and forth on this, and you're getting this one because so you can talk about what the birds go after, because she found bullet galls on the tree, and then she found shredding bark, which they do, but then she saw these giant holes in the bark, and these are not terribly old trees, but they've been pretty well cared for with planting. So
the birds are notorious to go after any insect. So when you have a wound like that, you're going to have a number of Jim's friends laying eggs, especially if there's any wet material in there. And as those animals kind of bore, they actually let off little clickings that birds can sense. And then they start pecking and pulling the bark off, going after those insects. So what you have is a predator going after an insect that's going after an injury. So
you don't think the bird was going after the little galls or the little
Well, it could, because inside the galls is also
tiny little larvae.
Larvae, but they would have to peck the galls apart.
But it looks like that. There's some stress factor there maybe, where there's been some borers that have been further damaged.
Right, it looks like some borers, because it looks like it's wet and moist, and that would put in a lot, even some flies may lay their larvae in there. And birds would love those maggots. That's pure protein. That's a good meal. I'd go for it if I was hungry. You know?
If you were a bird.
You would.
Well, we're not bird.
I'd rather starve to death, I think. All right, thanks, Dennis. All right, Kyle, this is an interesting hosta question. Again, this came to you because you brought in a sample of virus X 3 weeks ago. This is North Bend. And she said, this is in the shade. It's been there for about 5 years. She's noticed this strange patterning. Is it an insect, a disease, a worm? So far, it's the only one affected. And then she followed up a little bit and said, you know, similar someplace else, but not following the vein. So this one is actually, the pattern is following the veins.
Okay. Yeah.
And there's some insect chew probably off, or rabbits.
It's a little bit easier, and Jim could take that. But as far as the first picture that just had some of those brown streaks in there, not entirely sure if it has been showing up for a couple years. They usually could be one of the viruses. Hostas, in addition to Hosta virus X, there are a couple other other viruses that hostas can get. There's a tobacco virus that can cause kind of somewhat similar symptoms to that. So if you are seeing that spread, I would just recommend roguing out those plants, and then maybe even if you have some hostas near it, to rogue out those ones that are surrounding as well, just in case they may have been infected. And then avoid planting anything in that same area, at least the rest of this season. If it is a virus, most likely that virus can survive on any infected root tissue. And you want to make sure that has time to completely decompose before you put in another hosta or something like that.
On the previous image where the leaves were spread out and you could see damage there, it almost looked like the leaves were really fresh and kind of rolled, you know how when they come out of the whorl. And something got in there and chewed it, and so of course when it unfolds, you got yourself a big area then that's affected. So I would suspect maybe grasshoppers in that case, but of course slugs and snails like hosta as well too.
Bunnies like hostas.
That reminded me of the slug.
Right.
When I saw it.
Okay. All right. Thanks, guys. Sarah, you have a couple of linden questions.
Okay.
The first being one that is clearly, I think our audience can see the one to the left there that is doing terribly. This is Valparaiso, 28 years ago, scrawny and thin, and they're wondering what's going on that one. One side remains dark green, and then the other one is Hastings, 13 years old, and showing some yellowing in the leaves. So two different situations here.
Well, in those first two pictures, it does look like there's some planting depth issues here, because if you look really closely at the base of that tree right there, you can see how the sides of the trunk go straight down into the ground like sides of a telephone pole. And that's an indication that the root system is buried too deep in the soil. And that does have a big impact on the overall health of the tree, because if the tree can't grow roots properly, then that translates into scrawny growth, small leaves, poor canopy fill. As the tree gets older, you may see branch dieback, and that's all because the roots are too deep in the soil. They can't pull up oxygen that they need to grow, and so consequently you get less root growth. It also, I'm wondering also if this tree has a girdling root that is compressing the trunk on the right-hand side of the screen, because you see one branch low down on the other side that has a good dark green color, and it looks like the leaves are larger and better filled on that one branch, which kind of tells me that maybe there's good water and nutrient flow coming up that small section of the trunk, but the rest of the trunk is not functioning properly. So unfortunately, there really isn't a whole lot that they can do in this situation. I mean, they could eliminate the grass that's growing right up to the trunk. They could mulch the base of the tree with 2 to 3 inches of a good wood chip mulch. Maybe help improve root growth as much as possible, and don't let the tree be drought stressed when we have dry periods in the summer. That's about all you can do, though, because obviously you can't address root issues at this point, in the tree's life. Right. The tree may not have a long life because of these root issues. The other tree, it's a little hard to tell with just this one picture and a couple of yellow leaves what exactly is going on there. It'd be really great if they could get a couple of samples and send them to us so we could check for various potential problems that could be causing that. Sometimes we see trees put on a good canopy in the spring when moisture is prevalent, and then see them shedding some leaves as temperatures get hotter and conditions get dry. That could be what's going on, but it's hard to tell from that one picture.
Yeah, we need a little bit more info on that one. All right, thank you, Sarah. Our garden is off to another great start this year with the ornamentals and the vegetables really growing well. This week, we're going to highlight one of our ornamentals that we all love. Let's take a minute to see what's happening out at the Backyard Farmer Garden.
This week in the Backyard Farmer Garden, we're going to start investigating and seeing how those new 2018 All-America Selection plants are doing in our garden. The first one looks fantastic. That is the Canna South Pacific Orange. Remember a few years ago we had the Canna South Pacific Scarlet, how wonderful it was, this really deep kind of red almost Hawaiian looking flower. Well, this is a sister to that, and this is holding up true, just as good as that scarlet one. The orange one is a compact canna. You can start it from seed in your greenhouse. We started about March in our greenhouse. It is only hardy to zone 8. We didn't really get any of the rhizomes to kind of winter over. We did try that, doesn't work very well, but they start very easily from seed, so you don't have to worry about it. So stop by the Backyard Farmer Garden, check out the 2018 AAS Flower Winner Canna South Pacific Orange.
You know, those All-America cannas really do well from year to year. Just another great reason for you to stop by the next time you're in Lincoln. 24/7, 365. It might not look quite that good in the winter, but you know, it's still worth a trip to the dairy store. All right, so a Lincoln viewer has the hydrangea called Twist and Shout, and the leaves look like lace. What's been eating them and what to do about it?
I suspect it's Japanese beetle we talked about, and it has such a wide host range. But look for that characteristic kind of like doily pattern where there's just a lot of small holes that merge together to form that net-like pattern. So, you know, in cases where you have Japanese beetles on plants that are flowering, the only option you really have is in the evening hours, you just kind of hit them with something, a compound such as pyrethrins, you know, the quick knockdown kinds of insecticides that don't persist, so they require contact. And then by morning, usually it's dissipated, and so the day can just wear on normally. But that's about all you can do. Fortunately, Japanese beetles do cluster, you know, and so it's very satisfying to hit them with a shot of pyrethrins.
All right, thanks, Jim. Dennis,
yes.
this viewer wants to know what they can do to keep squirrels or other varmints from digging in their potted plants.
You can use chicken wire. Spread it out when you first plant the plants, or you put the seeds or bulbs in, and the plants will come up through the chicken wire. Yet the squirrel, when it tries to dig to bury its nuts or to find the bulbs, will hit that chicken wire and will be discouraged. That's one of the better things to do, and it seems easier to do it that way. And the other part is when the plants in the fall do die, all you do is pick up the chicken wire and it cleans out your pot.
Excellent idea.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have thought of that part of it. Okay, Kyle, I don't know whether this is yours or not, but you're going to get it.
Oh,
so,
perfect.
This is an Auburn viewer. They have cedars, and they say the tips, a lot of the tips are browning and dying. So is this the classic cedar, one of those funky diseases?
Well, kind of distribution is going to be pretty important on this one. And so if we're seeing these tips die back on all the branches, on all sides of the cedar, then I'm guessing that maybe we are dealing with something environmental. If it's on one side specifically as well, that's another thing that it could be some more winter dieback. We have seen a fair amount of that. However, there are a couple of fungal pathogens that can infect cedars. If you see any kind of black pimple-looking things on any of the needles, that would be a good indication that you are dealing with a fungal pathogen. And then I would just recommend pruning that out to increase airflow. Increased airflow decreases the amount of time those needles stay wet, and you don't have as much chance for those fungi to infect, if that is the case.
All right, thank you, Kyle. Sarah, this is from Scotts Bluff in Morrill County. The tomato plants are lovely, but the tomatoes themselves turn grotesque in shape at about $half size. Anything they can do about that?
So yeah, we saw a picture of this, and they were fused. It looked like there were some small tomatoes fused together. I'm almost wondering if maybe it's the opposite, if maybe the flower was not pollinated properly, and so you didn't get some tissue developing that should have developed between those lobes of the tomato. So I don't know, it could be a pollination problem, or it could be kind of a weird fusion of flowers. We see that happening occasionally too. It's just sort of an oddity. I mean, it doesn't make the tomatoes inedible, so I would just
enjoy
it, eat them. BLTs.
All right, Sarah, this is a Syracuse viewer. She wants to know if there are good varieties of black raspberries for southeast Nebraska.
Yeah, you know, and we actually have a publication through extensionpubs.unl.edu on all different fruit cultivars that you might want to choose from. Chester is a good one for blackberries. That would be one you could think about.
Excellent. A Blair viewer sent in pictures of a chlorotic river birch and is wondering, will it ever grow out of it or not?
It will need to, if it has a history of this, it probably will need iron injections to treat the chlorosis, and it probably will come back. So you'll probably have to keep treating, you know, for forever, indefinitely.
All right. We have a couple of viewers who say their potatoes are flowering or they're very tall, but there aren't very many potatoes underground. Should they mow them, fertilize them?
No, don't mow them. They need that foliage, so don't take the foliage off. I wouldn't fertilize unless there's really a nutrient deficiency. So I'm thinking you just need to be a little bit more patient and just give them some more time to develop.
All right. We have a viewer who said cut down a tree and they were told that the roots will continue to grow for 7 years.
Well, the roots are still alive, so many trees will send up shoots from the root system, suckers, to try to stay alive, you know, since you've cut off the top, basically. So you may need to do a stump treatment to actually kill the root system, so that you make sure that you don't have a lot of suckers and have a headache, you know, from that whole situation.
Okay, but the roots are not.
No, the roots are not living. Well, they're not.
They're not doing that.
That's kind of a weird question.
All right, thanks, Sarah.
We got potential here to
Right.
beat Sarah. She's off her mark tonight.
I'm off my
Went
game.
longer.
Yeah.
All right, Kyle, are you ready?
Oh, of course I am.
So we have a viewer who wants to prevent slime mold in their turf, and they're wondering whether they should put bleach on the mower blades to keep it from spreading.
I wouldn't recommend doing that. If you want to keep slime mold away, just blast it with a hose as soon as it shows up and it'll disperse.
All right. We have another viewer whose top of their smoke tree is dying all of a sudden. Any ideas on that one?
If it's just the top, could either be some winter injury because of the winter that we had, or if you'd follow the top down, there might be some sort of canker or something girdling the top that was killing it.
All right. Potatoes, they're wondering if only the top is looking terrible, is this a virus and will it kill the tuber?
If it's only the top, without knowing more, it's kind of really hard to tell. You can inspect the tuber. If the tuber is still firm, not soft at all, has a good color, it's probably going to be fine to eat.
All right. Both Carney and Blair are wondering, what do they spray on their ornamental pears next year to stop the rust?
Really, a lot of our common kind of, I want to say. I want to say a strobilurin fungicide in the spring would be fairly effective, but really the timing is going to be the most critical time for that. So you want to make sure you do a fungicide application early in the spring. This time of year, it's way too late.
I just love it when you guys are just completely cattywampus.
Glad someone likes it.
Okay, Dennis, are you ready?
Yeah, yes, I'm ready.
Cut it short,
Okay.
Dennis, cut it short, you got a chance.
We have a couple of viewers who said they have piles of bark chips showing up. They're about 1/2 inch wide and 2 to 3 inches long.
Tree squirrels, we see a lot on campus for micronutrients and moisture.
Will raccoons go after the honey in beehives?
Yes, most definitely. They did it on campus.
And how do you exclude them?
You trap them, and then they have to be taken care of.
And you don't mean relocate?
That's not allowed in our state.
All right. So we heard on a public radio station that in Arizona there is an issue with rattlesnakes that are nesting and laying their eggs in pool noodles. Are you seeing that in Nebraska?
Rattlesnakes are vipers, viper meaning viviparous, which means they have live young, so they cannot lay eggs. So it has to be an urban legend. No rattlesnake has eggs.
All right. We have a viewer who said they saw a black snake swimming in Lake McConaughey. What would that be?
Black snake in Lake McConaughey, probably a racer, a dark-phased yellow belly racer.
All right. Nice job.
Okay.
Okay, Jim, you ready? I have 9 questions.
I'm doomed. I
written
think
down
Dennis
for you.
is going to have it, so we'll try it. We'll give it a try.
All right. This is a Nebraska City viewer who says they have bees in a tree and wonder who they call to get rid of them.
Nebraska Beekeepers Association, look it up on Google and you'll find somebody who wants it.
All right. Are autumn purple ash and all the other ash species in the state susceptible to EAB?
Absolutely, yes.
All right. We have viewers who heard the cicadas, but it's not been consistent this year. Does that indicate anything?
Wait a little bit longer and it will be very loud.
Okay, this viewer wants to know if her cat can bring chiggers into the house.
Not very likely, no.
All right. A Johnson Lake viewer from the storm last weekend said they saw hundreds of very delicate flying insects landing all over the docks and things with like real thin wings and two things out of the back.
They could be mayflies. It could be, I was trying to think of chironomids, you know, the midges that are often in the sludge at the bottom of the lakes feeding on that, yeah.
Okay, pawpaws are getting Japanese beetles. Is there a non-toxic thing like neem oil that could be used?
You said it. That's a good one to try, neem oil, to repel them. Not so much to control, but to repel them.
Did Jim win?
Nice.
Tied.
Jim.
Well, congratulations.
Good job,
Only
guys.
because the two on the end here sort of imploded.
It was so information rich. But that's what extension is all about.
Right.
You want to give everybody the full story.
All right.
Only the facts during the...
All right, Sarah, what do we have for our actually red, white, and blue?
Yeah, red, white, and blue today. So I'll start with this one here in the front, the little flower in the front. Here, you can probably see it better if it's not in front of my red shirt. That is a daylily. So daylilies are really coming into their own right now, really starting to be colorful. And you know, you can get all sorts of different heights and sizes in daylilies. Some are rebloomers, which are great. Some, you know, will give you one big flush and be very, very colorful, and then we'll be done. A great, easy perennial to grow. So, you know, you really need to have daylilies in almost every garden. So here in the mid-sized flower, this is a blue hyssop. This one is blue boa. We were having some good jokes about it earlier that this is not a snake, but it's a great perennial for butterflies. So blue hyssop, blue boa hyssop would be a great one to add if you would like butterflies in your garden. Then the white flowers are the annual form of, they're larkspur. They're a delphinium, but they're the annual form. And they will reseed themselves and usually come back in pastel colors, so white, pink, kind of a light blue, light lavender sort of a color. But you know, a great annual flower to allow to come back and reseed in your garden every year.
Excellent, thanks, Sarah. And I think our viewers can probably see how many seeds they put on. So
all these little seed pods.
all the little pods. All right, thanks, Sarah. All right, pictures for you next.
Another
And this
gallery, small gallery.
This is a small gallery, only two
Okay.
pictures on this one. The first one here is insects on the eggplant, and you can see that stripy thing.
Colorado potato beetle, and I think there's a larva back there. They're really pink, very rich pink in color. So
Okay.
of course they're public enemy #1. Of course, don't like to have those around. Pick them off, or a carbaryl will take care of them.
All right, and then the second one, this is actually a Pisgah, Iowa viewer, which is Harrison County. These are in the greenhouse on eggplant and pepper. He's been dusting with 7. Wonders is there anything they can do. He's also seen some small red ants.
Okay. Yeah, they look like they might be. You know, green peach aphids are very resistant to insecticides, and they're very common in the horticulture industry where there's plants that are propagated and then sold and that kind of thing. Note to always, whenever you purchase a plant, wherever you buy it, make sure you inspect those very carefully, because you could come along with green peach aphids, which are very resistant to insecticides. So maybe that's why the carbaryl isn't working. If it's not too hot, I'd give insecticidal soaps a try.
In the greenhouse.
And see if it's on the label too, whatever you try, but I believe that may be okay to use. So smother them. In other words, you're essentially kind of smothering them.
All right, excellent. Thanks, Jim. All right, Dennis, a couple of pictures here. The first is from central Nebraska. Found this guy high on a hill above an irrigation lake, crawling across a driveway in the gravel. And their question is, should they be concerned? Where does it live? What should happen here?
Well, it's one of our only venomous snakes in the state. It's a prairie rattlesnake. And the thing is, we hardly get any bites in the state, less than 5 a year, and they're usually people who go after to kill them. So the biggest thing, if you walk 5 meters away or 15 feet, they'll always go the other way. So don't go after them, they will come after you. The other thing is, there must be a prairie dog nearby, even if it may not be an active prairie dog town, because prairie dog towns is where they hibernate and where they give birth for that species. So your concern is how close you are to a prairie dog town that has not been completely caved in or is still active.
All right, and then the second picture is from southeast Nebraska. Found these, there's a quarter next to it. They're wondering if they're snake eggs.
No, those are a fungus. I wish snakes, because snakes are to me a fun guy to be with, but these are real fungi. They'll grow in the mushrooms, right?
Yes, good chance that they could become fairy rings or something beautiful like that. And I think mushrooms are fun guys to be with.
Yeah, I know.
And you guys are just all fun guys. So let's just set that record straight. Okay. All right, Kyle, you have several fungus questions. The first here is Bellevue Viewer, and all the way conked up the trunk there. They did scrape it off, but it grew back. They're wondering what to do. Goner.
I would start thinking about a new tree to plant there. That's anytime you're seeing that many fungal fruiting bodies up a tree, there's likely a lot of other issues going on. As soon as you start seeing issues with it leafing out, dropping leaves earlier, then you want to be getting rid of it because it may be a hazard.
All right, and you've got two more that are tree issues, and this one is actually a huge oak planted in Tilden by her great-grandparents. What you're seeing at the base there, she says it's very soft and rotted. So should she be concerned about this one, or is it normal? It has been treated with iron about every 2 years for 30 years or more.
Okay, well, typically soft spots on tree trunks aren't normal. So I would definitely be concerned about that. If it's dependent on the size of it, if it's not spreading and it's occupying a fairly small portion of the trunk, then you might be okay. The tree might recover, but similar to that last one, if you are starting to see any of those kind of overall stress issues, again, early dropping the leaves early this fall, late leafing out in the spring, I would start to be concerned if that soft area, you're noticing that it is spreading to encompass a larger part of the trunk, then I'd try to get rid of that tree pretty quickly.
All right, and I think we have one more, if I'm not mistaken, and this is actually a green ash, and it's got some serious sorts of things, and it looks like a fairy ring growing around the base of it. And the question is whether the fairy ring is an indication of some issues going on with the tree.
The fairy ring itself is not causing any issues. The fairy ring is probably just using some of the root tissue from the tree to feed on. But the other fungi that are growing inside of that crack, those definitely are something to be concerned about. And again, I hate to say it, but you may just want to start thinking about a new tree. On the bright side, you probably don't have to worry about emerald ash borer in that one. So.
All right. Sarah, let's talk tomatoes again.
Okay.
So this is actually a picture of, and this is from Bridgeport. So there's the plant itself, and then she has the tomato that looks like 3 tomatoes have fused together and are forming a single thing.
Right.
She's wondering if that's an issue or not.
No, I mean, it's odd for sure, but it's not a huge issue. I mean, the tomatoes are still edible, so just go ahead and let them develop and eat them the way you normally would.
All right, and then we have a Beaver Lake viewer who sent pepper plants that seem to have something wrong with them. Don't look healthy, no flowers, no chemicals have been used. And I don't know what the watering or the flooding situation was in that part of the state. I have no idea on that one.
Yeah, I don't know, it's a little hard to say. The plant is a little thin. It doesn't have it doesn't have as good a leaf fill as I would kind of expect to see. So, but I don't see anything obvious there to indicate what might be wrong. I mean, the flowers might not have set when we had the hotter temperatures. You know, anytime you have temperatures above 90, you expect poor pollination, and flowers often abort if they don't pollinate properly. So that could be the reason why you haven't gotten good fruit set up to this point. I would expect when temperatures are a little cooler, back down in the 80s, you would start to get some fruit set. And there was a flower on that plant in the picture. So
right.
I don't know, it may be more a combination of weather factors than it is anything, you know, really like disease related or anything along that line.
Right, okay, thank you, Sarah. Well, a popular subject here on Backyard Farmer is protecting those pollinators. We want to give you some strategies that help control the nasties, but we also want to keep those pollinator friends around to do their work of pollinating our fruits, vegetables, and everything else that we want to eat. In order to do that, you'll need to plant some pollinator-friendly plants. A great example of that is behind the Lancaster County Extension Office in Lincoln.
We're at the Cherry Creek Pollinator Habitat at the Nebraska Extension Lancaster County Extension Office. Our pollinator habitat is behind our office and open to the public. We started it in 2013 and we created a pollinator habitat to teach the residents of Lancaster County and Nebraska about pollinators. Our habitat has over 40 native plants that we have labeled for people to see the different native plants and how they might look in their landscape. We encourage people to plant native plants because they're important to our native pollinators. We also have a bee hotel and an insect hotel to promote native solitary bees and to provide shelter and nesting places for our native bees. We have a wide assortment of native plants. We have several milkweeds that are for pollinators and for monarch butterflies. We have plants that bloom from April through September because that's what we need for our native pollinators. They need plants blooming all through the season. It's important for a pollinator habitat that you have nesting sites, food for immature pollinators. You know, like our butterflies, we need food sources for our caterpillars, so we have some herbs that we've added. So it's real important to have an assortment of plants that are blooming the whole season and plant them in groups so you have mass plantings for the insects to forage on. We hope you consider making part of your landscape a pollinator habitat. It's important to have native plants, but you can also have other garden plants that attract pollinators, have a water source, and reduce or eliminate the use of pesticides in those areas to promote these beneficial insects.
So this is just like your own friends. You give them something to eat, something to drink, a place to stay. You got friends for a long time.
Yeah.
And they'll never leave.
And they'll never leave. All right, so we have a 1, 2, 3 again for you, Jim.
Right.
And this is, first one, they found this guy hanging out in their woodpile frame.
All right.
And wonder, is it a good guy or a bad guy?
Tiger swallowtail. That's the last stage of the larva. It will change into a pupa. And it's a beautiful butterfly, yeah.
All right, and then our second one is They're in the house.
We've had a lot of cases of these lately, last couple weeks, invading buildings and homes, and that's called the imported longhorned weevil because it has real long antennae there.
Okay.
Came from Japan originally, and it's just episodic. It'll be a nuisance for a while, but you can put a barrier treatment around the house if you need to keep all those other kinds of critters out of the house.
All right, and I think we have a third one for you, if I'm not mistaken, which is...
Ash gray blister beetle.
Yeah.
They feed in clusters, they're gregarious, they like to eat together. But they're beneficial. So as larvae, they feed on grasshopper eggs in the soil. So this is one of those trade-offs, you know, spotty kind of damage here and there, or you can just get rid of them or put them somewhere else. But yeah, beneficial insects.
All right, thank you, Jim. So a couple of things chewing on things, Dennis. Okay. The first is an oak, a little tiny oak that's got a little tiny chew. Wonders what it is. This is papillion. Yeah. And then the second ones are roses.
Well, the roses, that's rabbits.
Okay.
Back to the other one. It looks like the chew happened maybe during the winter. If it happened during the winter, that can also be rabbits.
Okay.
It's too low for squirrels if it happened just now. And it almost looks like it could have happened and then the bark finally fell off from insects. So it could be that when the snow was higher or there was some snow, it's hard to tell the exact distance from the ground. A rabbit took a little bit off to get some nutrients from the canyon in the winter, and it's finally showing its signs now. But the second one was definitely rabbit damage, the new growth on those roses.
Yeah, we had several of those actually this week. So keep those darn wascally
Wabbits away.
caged out, right?
I have a quick question for Jim.
Yeah.
So that new Weevil,
Yeah.
is that bigger or smaller than our other Weevils?
Which one? That's that
The imported, yeah.
The imported one?
Yeah.
What is that?
I'm trying to figure out which one's the lesser of two Weevils.
Oh, Dennis.
Let's go.
Oh my gosh. We all are
Kevin.
I was wondering where you're going with that one, but clearly you knew what you were doing.
All right, Kyle, you have to stop laughing to answer.
Okay.
All right, this is a Syracuse viewer. Green peppers were looking great. Now they have spots on the leaves. So you've got spots and not looking so good. They're mulched with straw, used a soaker hose before it rained 16 inches. Okay. And the second is actually spots on a viburnum in Lancaster County near Eagle. So you've got pepper and then you've got a viburnum that's showing some spots.
Well, good job with the soaker hose. Unfortunately, yes, you get a foot plus of rain, then anything will splash up. On the peppers, it did look like some of those lesions kind of had some concentric rings inside of them. That's typically a sure sign of early blight caused by one of our alternaria fungi. That's best controlled with, again, any strobilurin fungicide. Also, some of our chlorothalonil is another good product for early blight. As far as the viburnum, it's, again, some sort of leaf spot. What the exact cause is, I'm not sure. It could be a Cercospora. It might be a phoma. But regardless, sanitation will be the best thing. And so in the fall especially, once those leaves have dropped, just make sure to remove all the leaf litter. And then next year, that should really decrease the amount of infection. And also, you can just do some pruning this year. Anything you can do to increase airflow through that canopy should decrease the leaf spots as well.
All right, thank you, Kyle. Sarah, this is actually a fun question instead of what's wrong.
All right.
This is a viewer who says, for the first time his pear tree has put on a great crop. They're beginning to turn a bit red already, and he knows it's a bit of time before they are ripe. He wants to know when you pick them and how to keep them nice before you do that.
So the red coloration is not what you want to pay attention to. You want to actually look at what you call the ground color, which is the greenish. Usually you can see it on the pears on the back side where it's more in the shade. You'll be able to see the ground color better. So you want to harvest pears before they're ripe. If you let them ripen on the tree, they're going to get too soft and kind of mushy or mealy, and you won't like the texture of them. So you harvest pears unripened. But you want that ground color to change from kind of the apple green that it's about this time of year. It'll become a lighter green, or maybe even just a little bit of a yellowish tinge. But the pear itself will still be hard. And that is when you want to harvest it. And then you can, if you've got a lot of them, you can put them in storage. So you put them in cold storage, and pears can be stored, at about 32 degrees or so with a fairly high amount of humidity. Then when you want to ripen them, you bring a few of them out, put them on the counter at normal room temperature, and give them, 4 or 5 days until they get soft, till they get a good eating texture, and then that's when you eat them. So harvest them when they're still hard.
All right, excellent. Thank you, Sarah. Well, we have a couple of announcements of fun things in the gardening world. The first one, I believe, is the Plymouth Improvement Association Flower and Art Show this Saturday. We have numbers on the screen for people who are interested in that one. Our second one tonight is the Grow a Row produce donations. A reminder that every Tuesday from 5 to 7 in the BYF garden, you bring us our produce, we weigh it, it gets donated. It's really an excellent idea. All right, we have only a minute or so. Jim, we had a beautiful picture of a very white spider for the at the break, and we had 2 or 3 people actually send us pictures of that little white spider. What are those little white spiders?
It's a crab spider, and crab spiders frequently will be on flowers because they're going to be preying upon any flies or bees that forage on those flowers, and they can actually blend in and change their color to hide a little bit the same shade as the flower itself. So that one's pretty cool. I love the shot there, the contrast of the, I think those are phlox, right? And or unless it's,
No, that's a butterfly bush.
oh, butterfly bush, okay. Yeah, it's beautiful contrast there.
Yeah. But apparently that one did not know it's supposed to turn lavender.
Well, lavender's a hard color to come by, but you know, white, yellow, greenish, just
It was probably a boy and he didn't want to be
Yeah.
lavender.